Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma Hari Ananta Hari Katha Ananta. Welcome viewers. Once again we are going to take a deep dive into the nectar of Ramcharitmanas with blessings from the lotus feet of His Holiness Maharaj Shri Ram Kinkar Upadhyaya Ji and Her Holiness Pujya Didima Mandakini Ji. We are on the roll trying to prevent the destructive, explosive Martian energy from detonating our lives. We are trying to understand how we ourselves and nobody else is most important. Key point, key take home point. We ourselves, with our thoughts, with our inner demons, create a life of misery and suffering for ourselves. How different malefic, ignorant influences determine the course of our lives. This Mars and Saturn placement from 1st July to 18th August in the 5th and 11th house of the zodiac, the Buddhi and Labh Sthan, as we mentioned earlier, is very, very significant and revealing. Our Purva Punya, our Prarabdha is the 5th house, and exactly opposite 180 degrees is our Labh Sthan, our earnings, our incoming benefic influences. So whatever is our Prarabdha, our 5th house, our Purva Punya, our capital, that will determine our earnings. So the placement of Martian energy in the 5th house, the sun's house, the solar house, fire energy, and Mars itself is also a fiery planet. It is a firebrand planet. So how the solar energy, which is actually meant to purify. The Vedas begin with the word Agni. Agni, fire. The Agni Tattva element is so important because it purifies. It makes the gross subtle. When you burn fire or you burn anything, it turns to ashes. So the process, the way of becoming finer, of refinement, the process of refinement is activated, is conducted by the fiery element. So Mars in the house of Sun Leo can either refine us or it can burn us. So whether we will be refined or whether we will be burnt will be determined by the position we take, by the choices we make. Now, in one series of kathas, of discourses, Her Holiness Didima Mandakini Ji was making, as usual, a very, very unique and a very witty point. She was talking about two great Mahavakyas from the Vedas and Upanishads, the great wisdom teachings. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma and Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi is the supreme realization, the supreme objective of human birth, to understand the real identity which is hidden, which is covered, which is shrouded by our ignorance. And this understanding, this Swarup Vigyan, is what Saturn teaches us. Now, Aham Brahmasmi, the supreme objective, the supreme knowledge, That knowledge, having derived which all other knowledge is obtained. One great monk of the Ramakrishna Mission order had once mentioned this during our philosophy class in the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, that knowledge, having derived which all other knowledge is obtained, that is the Atma Gyan, the self-knowledge, Atma Sakshatkar, when I meets I. And who is the I that I is going to meet? The ignorant I, the ignorant me who thinks that I am this body, meets the real, divine, higher self. The Brahma Tattva, the Brahma Gyan is awakened and it is made available to my consciousness, to my awareness. So, Aham Brahmasmi is a very, very important philosophical understanding, and it is the goal of human life. That is why we are given this highest birth, this yoni. Now, Didima Pujya Shri Mandakini ji made a very witty noting here. She said that only realizing Aham Brahmasmi will not do, and that will actually undo things. Because I will then think that I am God, and the rest is all untouchable, all inferior. So, along with Aham Brahmasmi, the realization of Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, that everything is God and divinity, that God exists, the God particle, the God vibration, every atom is divine. That realization is also important. Otherwise, Aham Brahmasmi is a problematic situation. Otherwise, Aham Brahmasmi, instead of doing good for us, becomes very, very damaging. Now, this viewpoint that Aham Brahmasmi alone becomes very, very destructive, and only when Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, this knowledge dawns upon our realization along with Aham Brahmasmi, only then is the purpose achieved. This is very, very much the case with the Martian energy and the Mars-Saturn conflict and the Mars-Saturn destructive chain of events. The arrogance, the disdainful, lordly, insolent behavior of Mars, the overbearing, dominating, I am monarch of all I survey, is just the typical Martian energy. The tyrant, the Ravan DNA, where what does Ravan represent? He is the delusion, the wrong views, the ignorance, the moha. He went to the extent of lifting up Kailash with his finger because he wanted to bring Kailash, Lord Shiva, to Lanka. The typical Aham Brahmasmi alone distorted realization. Unless and until the Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma realization appears along with Aham Brahmasmi, things are going to get totally out of control and all hell will break loose, as did with Ravan and all other asuras, the hostile forces who did severe penances, some cases much greater penances than the Devatas, attained the boons from Brahmaji, Vishnuji, Shivji, and then they ran amok. Because the Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, that connection was missing. They were disconnected. So Didima Pujya Shri Mandakini ji made this very, very important observation and advised us during that katha to understand that we must not have this sattvic ego. Now, we don't need to go to the level of Aham Brahmasmi, but on our spiritual journey, as we move forward, the sattvic ego that I am very divine, I am very spiritual, I am doing my rituals, I am doing my mantras, I am doing my sadhanas, I am doing my parts. So a sattvic ego develops, and then a feeling of superiority over others becomes very, very strong, and from there the whole situation becomes distorted and poisonous. Now, this Saturn-Mars connection, Saturn is the planet of tapasya, of penance, of discipline, of patience, of perseverance, and of equality of the masses. Sun is the king, Saturn is the representative of the masses. So when Saturn is in contact with Mars, either in aspect or in conjunction, or there is a 410 aspect, Saturn is trying to tell Mars that, look bro, you are not the king. You have to develop yourself so that you can serve. And the king is the sun. In the astrological parlance, Mars is the warrior. He is the Senapati. Now, even if he has a king-like attitude, the king's role is to serve his kingdom. The king's role is not of dominating and creating havoc and torturing and tormenting his people. So that is when Mars becomes hoity-toity, God Almighty, which is the case in 99.99 cases amongst us. Because Mars is our disdainful, arrogant, lordly, insolent, overbearing nature. So and during the Saraswati, when Saturn is traversing the three signs, 12th from the moon, moon sign, and 2nd from the moon, and the Dhyas, 4th from the moon and the 8th from the moon. These are the times in our life when Saturn is giving us a 100% dressing down, taking away all our crowns and all the halos which we are carrying all around us, and bringing in a very, very realistic, practical approach to life. And for those who have this arrogant, egoistic, disdainful attitude, for them the Saturn periods become absolutely third-degree torture. So it is very important, as we mentioned in the last video, that Mars energy is extremely important for this individual development and growth. Mars has to be strong and powerful and active, because Mars is Mangal, it's tapasya, it's fire. Without that fire, without that energy, without that Agni, without that Tapagni, we cannot come to the realization of Aham Brahmasmi. But that Aham Brahmasmi alone again makes the entire situation destructive and troublesome. That is exactly what happened to sage Vishwamitra. His spiritual journey was a journey of competition, was a journey of envy. It was not a journey of realizing the divine. And he was constantly trying to be at par with sage Vasishtha. And we have many stories and episodes about it. So it is important during this time, during this Mars-Saturn association, 1st July to 18th August, all of us who will be suffering, who will be getting strong beating, all of us who will be feeling the punishing lashes of Saturn, it will not be because there is some divine injustice going on against us. No, it will be because we are arrogant, we are disdainful, and we think that we are monarch of all we survey. And Aham Brahmasmi, as the Ravana DNA has awakened in our existence, and Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma is nowhere in the horizon. So we have to develop that connection with the whole. The soul has to realize its connection with the whole. Mars is that energy, that power which can enable us to achieve this connection. But somewhere along the line, there is always a short circuit due to the Maya, the delusion, the various demons in our antakaran, the Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Ahankar, which create parallel pathways, which instead of taking us to our goal of heaven, actually lead us to the underworld, the netherworlds of Patal and destruction. So this is how, once again I would like to mention, the scriptures, the philosophies, the stories of the Puran can help us to clear the wrong concepts in our minds, can help us to raise our consciousness, and can help us to understand that the planets in the sky, the planets in our horoscope, only represent, symbolize what we think and what we do. That only is the most important word. And we can thereafter, if we wish to, take on the challenge of making the necessary changes. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, Hari Ananta, Hari Katha Ananta.